My name is Tammy Schwartz, and I am the director of Miami University's Urban Cohort, formerly the Urban Teaching Cohort. And I am with a lot of partners today, both youth and community partners. And we're happy to have you here in this session as part of celebrating Miami University's Center for Community Engagement Over the Rhine, long phrase, 20th anniversary. And so we're delighted that we get to share in this space here in Over the Rhine, where we do a lot of our work together with some amazing youth partners and some community partners today. The focus of our session today is talking about the way in which, through the Urban Cohort, we are very intentional about the ways that we connect our curriculum with our Miami students to what is important in the community. And so today we're going to focus on what we do in our first year course in our Urban Cohort and the way in which we connect with youth and listen to what youth care about and the ways that they want to respond to important issues in their lives. And then after that, we're going to turn it over to some folks who represent our community partners and the way in which we collaborate with them in our second year course called the Junior Seminar. So we're looking forward to having you today. We have folks here in the room with us, and we're happy to have you, as well as any of you who are watching live. This is kind of fun. I've never done this live TV before. So my latent actress is coming out. So welcome, everybody. So first, what we'd like to do is I'd like to introduce some people in the room, and I'm going to start right now by introducing our youth teams at two schools in Cincinnati Public. And then later, I'll make sure when we bring them on to introduce our community partner team. So as I mentioned, I'm Dr. Tammy Schwartz, and I'm a blessed human being to get to work with all these amazing people. So I'd like to first introduce from some students from Boiler Community School in Lower Price Hill. And first, I'd like to introduce Alex. Alex, you want to give a wave so they see who you are? Next, awesome. And next is Gabby from our team. Hi. And next is Olivia. And then we also have our team who are represented by Withrow High School here in Cincinnati. And so I'd like to introduce on that team to start off with Dr. Radina, who teaches the first year seminar that our students do this collaborative work with youth in. And next, Mary Webb, phenomenal teacher from Withrow High School. And next is Serenity, one of the youth in that program there. Next is Renisa. Renisa, give a wave. And Faith. Faith is a part of that group. And then also we have 3 students from our Miami program who are participating in that first year class. So we have Clara with us today. And then we have, next to me, we have Morgan and Julian. So that is our extensive, we're told we're the largest group for this series this week, so go team. All right, so first what we'd like to do is each of the youth have gone through a process to decide on an issue that they care about. And so we're going to have the youth introduce those issues to you by reading a poem that they've created. They've each followed a similar framework that we've used based off the work of some folks who do some awesome work with youth activism across the country. And so we're going to start with Gabby. So listen in as Gabby shares the poem to hear what the issue is that Alex and Gabby and Olivia have been focused on. Gabby, you have it, and give it your voice, girl.
I am ashamed and frightened. I wonder why me. I hear my screams and the sound of my tired voice replay over and over in my head. I see a new me, somehow different. I want to walk out of this cage and not feel afraid. I'm ashamed and frightened. I pretend nothing happened. I feel weak and disgusting. I touch my face, wiping away my tears. I worry it will happen again. I cry to the thought of never being free. I am ashamed and frightened. I understand that it was not my fault. I say that someday I will get justice. I dream to use my voice to share my story and inspire others. I try to be strong. I hope my voice gives someone who is wondering why. I'm determined, powerful, and enough.
And we're going to turn it over to the Withrow team. Theirs is a collective version, so get ready.
I am an African-American teacher who values education both in school and out of school. I wonder why school and city leaders can't see the harm caused by our transportation issue.
I hear the problems within the communities, but I hear no solutions. I see the ghost of inequitable education haunting the hallways of our schools. I want justice and equity for all students.
I am a powerful young Black woman. I pretend so no one knows my true feelings or what I truly think.
I feel hurt because people are allowing children's education and lives to suffer.
I touch an imaginary touch. I worry about the students and how this transportation issue affects their daily lives.
I cry when the children of my city feel unsafe getting to school. I understand I'm the voice of my children and grandchildren, of generations after my own.
I dream of a world that allows all children to receive quality education.
I try to give grace to each person I come in contact with, but know when to advocate for change.
I hope that this world will become more accepting of different people.
I wish these problems for the students will vanish so they get a good education and succeed. I feel despair for these students in our community, but we have an impact.
All right. So we've got the issue of sexual assault that the young folks have been working on from the team with Euler in Lower Price Hill, and the issue that's come up with transportation for students in the Cincinnati Public Schools with the Withrow team. And so one of the things that I just would like to start off with today is the work that we do with these youth is called Youth Participatory Action Research. And it is YPAR, and YPAR is representative of that. It's a way of doing collective work with youth that focuses through a cycle of action, a dialogue, action, and reflection, so that we move through these cycles all the time to seriously think about issues. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Withrow team to share their work, and then they'll come back and share the work that the youth at Euler have been doing.
So I just want to start by saying that this has been the past 7 years doing this work, and the past 3 years at Withrow with the students here, some of the students here, has been amazing work. And it just, to me, represents this notion that youth are part of our solution to these deep systemic issues, and oftentimes we discount the knowledge and the experience that they bring. So I want to turn it over to Dr. Webb, who is the teacher of these students, and she's going to talk a little bit about this important issue of the transportation.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you all for having us here, first of all, giving us this platform to speak about this very important issue that we're having with CPS transportation. So as you know, last year, prior to last year, Cincinnati Public Schools had dedicated buses, and so those buses would bring students from their community directly to their schools. And this school year, we ended up with an issue where Metro decided that they could no longer support that service, and so now our students from all over the city are having to catch the bus with the general public. And so the students are getting to school late, and as you know, transportation has always been an issue of equity. So now this issue of equity not only impacts them in terms of their education and their ability to get to school, but it also impacts the family and the community at large. There are a number of issues that have arisen from this whole transportation issue. So when we look at some statistics about not just attendance, achievement, when we talk to community neighbors, there are issues that are going on in communities that didn't happen prior to this transportation issue. So this is important work for our students because it impacts them directly. So they're the experts because they're actually living this experience. And so this is a great platform for them because now we're talking about having students involved in coming up with the possible solutions for this important issue. So we created a slide to collect some data, and so the students are going to share that work with you.
So the schools that answered back was Withrow with 48.9% that attend and that are missing their buses, 12.2% Western Hills, 36.7% Vader schools that they attend.
So the majority of the students that participated in the survey were students that participated in YPAR. So we have access to students, of course, Withrow, but also at Woodward. So that's where we got most of the data from.
Okay, so in total we had 409 students who responded, but The major part of students, like 33.7% of students miss school once a week. And then you go to 26.4%, you miss 13% who miss twice per week. And this is a big thing because even once a week you can miss on a lot of information and important stuff, and it might put you behind in schoolwork, and it might put you behind in attendances. And if it happens often, over and over again, then that stuff adds up.
And in high school, attendance, of course, all school attendance is important, but it's one of the ways that you earn a seal for graduation.
How many different buses do you have to take to get to school? The number. 35.7% at year 1. 17.4% said does not apply. 41.8% said could buses.
And so we have students coming from all across the city, going to all of the different schools. And if you have to catch 2 buses, that means you have to generally go downtown and transfer to another bus, and that's problematic as well. So we're asking students to do something, many of them having to get up very early in order to get those 2 buses and still get to school late. So that's a huge issue for us. It's an issue for teachers as well, because teachers are planning, and then when we don't have a number of students in class, typically our class numbers are around 30. But as a result of this issue, you might end up with 5 students in class, and we're preparing for students to be in class, but then you have to make some adjustments to your planning because you don't have enough students to deliver that particular lesson. So it's problematic on a lot of levels.
And just recently we had testing, and that's a big issue because they have to move testing hours back just to accommodate their students. And some students don't come because they know they're going to be late, and so then they have to push their testing day back, and then that doesn't help because then the next day it's a planning mail, so they get behind. And it's really important because we have testing coming up for the next few weeks, so they can't be late, they have to be on time.
It holds us back from a lot of opportunities that we could have had, but we just don't have them anymore because of the bus services.
This graph shows what time students are getting on the bus in the morning. You can see that 10% of students are getting on the bus at 5:30 in the morning. It's hard enough for high school students to get to school and participate in their classes, and when they have to get on the bus, this doesn't even account for what time they actually have to wake up to get ready for school. As early as 5:30, it's going to be a lot more difficult to actually get students in the classroom, and their quality of education is going to be more poor because they're tired all the time.
And this is an important issue, not just for our students, but for our communities as well. Education is extremely important to every city, and so it is important that the community get behind this effort to support us in coming up with the best solutions that are in the best interest of the students.
And it takes some kids hours to get to school, even though they live 15, 20 minutes away. Like my friend, she lives like not even 10 minutes away, and she has to catch 2 buses, and she has to wake up at 6:30 in the morning. And she go downtown, and then she has to take a bus all the way from downtown, all the way back to Withrow, when she can just walk here in 15 minutes or less. And like that doesn't make any sense.
I don't think we had the graph on here, but just really quickly, one of the other important issues is that students are on the bus with the general public, and they're also seeing they're seeing violence. Females are getting sexually harassed on the bus. There are people that are drunk and things like that on the bus, and this is like early in the morning, and that's not to say that they don't ride the bus in other times, but when a student is going to school and they have to deal with all these extra things that might be happening on the bus that morning, it kind of sets them up for a day of like being stressed when they first get into the bus and get to school. So.
Wow. Very important topic and timely, and so glad that you have created that survey and gotten it out to so many. Again, we were sharing beforehand when we were talking with one another today about like 409 responses. There are research teams at Miami who send out surveys who don't get any kind of what's called a return rate like that. So you definitely know that you've hit on something very important to your peers across the district and in those schools when you get that kind of response rate. I don't know about the rest of you all in the room and out there, but I'm super excited to find out where you're going to move with this. So awesome. wonderful. And Dr. Radina and Dr. Webb, thank you so much for the leadership on that, and also for our students and collaborating in that work with you all. But most of all, thank you, the young students from Withrow. Awesome. Great. This is exciting. I don't know those of you in the room and who are joining us live, but this is why we love to do this work. It gives us hope for our world, and in particular our city. All right, next we're going to turn to the young folks next to me who have been working for quite a long time. I've known some of these young students next to me for several years. I met Gabby maybe 4 years ago when you were in the 4th grade. I'm now still working with Gabby, continuing to do work around issues that are important, and have known Alex for several years and just got to meet Olivia this past summer and watching the tremendous growth. So as you see, and you heard from the poem that Gabby shared, thanks Gabby, great reading of that, that the issue is the issue of sexual assault. And so Olivia's gonna kind of start us off here. Olivia, you want to share the statistic that you all found with everybody when you were researching about this issue?
We found every 68 seconds an American is a sexual assault.
Wow, wow. Yeah, and so what else did you find out in this work? You were looking at the definition. You can read it, sure, we've got time. We can maybe, if we can instruct the general public out there.
A legal sexual connection that usually involves force upon a person without consent or is inflicted upon a person who is incapable of giving consent, as because of age or physical or mental incapacity, or who plays the such as a doctor in a position or trust or authority.
Excellent, yeah. And so there were a number of statistics that you all in your research came upon. And as you can see here on the screen, you want to just share maybe one of those that really strikes you.
Ages 12 through 34 are at the highest risk of sexual assault.
Yeah, so the lots of kind of questions came up from this. Thank you, Olivia. I'm going to turn it over to Gabby, who's going to talk about the process that we went through in this work. It's all yours, Gabby.
So first we had to develop questions about this topic. So like, for example, like how we could help a victim of sexual assault. And then we needed to find answers to our questions. So we used mostly a website called RAIN, which is a National Sexual Assault Hotline, to answer our questions. And lastly, we read a book called What is a Girl Worth by Rachel Donaire, and she, the book is about her and her experiences with sexual assault. As some of you may know, she was a young gymnast who was sexually assaulted by her teen doctor. She wrote this story to help and inspire others and let them know that they're not alone. She also became an advocate for sexual assault and now speaks out and helps others.
Awesome, awesome, yeah, cool. So this has been our process, and I'm going to turn it over to Alex and kind of prompt Alex through. So as a result of this work, back in December, Alex and Gabby and Olivia came to campus with their Miami students who weren't able to join us today because they're in class at Miami. But we did a tour of the campus, but then we also had an opportunity to connect via Zoom with a young what do you call him, a filmmaker. See, I get nervous too, you all. A young filmmaker who created a film. You want to talk about what we witnessed there, Alex?
As we met with her, we were inspired to write our own story.
You want to tell what she produced?
She produced a film, animated film on her experience with sexual assault during high school.
And so they got to see this 20-something-year-old person who was vulnerable enough to share. Actually, her name's Claire Tankersley, and she won international awards for her short animated film on this. And so, take it away. You were inspired, Alex. What happened?
As we were working on our stories, I knew I knew I wanted to turn mine into a film. And as I expressed that idea, Miss Tammy had introduced us to Cyborgs. He is a screenwriter of Kung Fu Panda. He would Zoom in with us from Los Angeles, and he gave us tips, tricks, and advice on how to write a screenplay.
Do you want to share just a minute, though, Alex, about what the story is about that you wrote that now Cy is helping you all turn into a screenplay?
My story was about a young girl named Mystic. She was in high school. She had been sexually assaulted by someone she knows, and she was sharing her story.
And works to become an activist, like the character in the story. So inspired not only by Claire, but also by the book that they read. So, yeah. Awesome. You want to say, next slide. Thanks, John. Yep. So,
in our last Zoom meeting,
back, John. Thanks. Go ahead.
In our last Zoom meeting with Cy, he had gave me advice on how to work with my dialogue and screenwriting on that. And so here we are. I'm fixing up the screenwriting, and we're going to hope to start making it this summer.
So they will be working on film production this summer to create a short live-action film, and hopefully we will be inviting you all to like preview theirs. And I hear you all are doing a documentary. You might be doing a documentary. I'm not didn't mean to put you on the spot. So who knows? You may be coming and invited to a special preview of all of our work, as it's going to be in some form of film. So what I'd like to do, you go back, John.
One thing really quick.
Yeah.
We did have a map that I think got moved down that Claire had created. So is there any way we could just talk about it really quick? Because I
This
know she
one?
put a
Yeah.
lot of work into
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Go, Claire. Absolutely. Thanks,
Sorry.
Dr. Medina.
That's okay.
So using ArcGIS Pro, which is a mapping software, I used statistics from the Ohio Board of Education to create this map of economic disadvantage in Cincinnati public schools. Because transportation is a matter of equity, it's of the students who have to catch the bus and the students whose parents can afford the time and I guess the effort to drive their kids to school. So on my map, the bigger circles represent the schools with higher student populations, and then how red the circle is indicates what percentage of students are considered economically disadvantaged by the Ohio Board of Education. So their criteria is whether a student or a family member is eligible for government assistance programs, including for your reduced lunch programs. So there were schools that were even up to 100% of students qualifying for those programs and living in economic disadvantage, which is definitely an important thing to talk about in an issue of transportation and equity.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad that you brought that to our attention because we would not have wanted to miss that. And thanks for your work on that. That's awesome. So we are going to leave questions at the end of our time together today. Leave time for questions at the end of our time. But I did want to just ask those of you in this semicircle now, in this space here and over the Rhine, and good job, great job, to just, what have you learned about yourself or the topic as a part of this process? You want to go, Alex?
I've learned that it's important for us to speak out for those who cannot and who are afraid to speak out, because we can be their voice when they're scared.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Students, faculty, Miami students?
What I have learned was that by being a part of this program and being able to speak on issues that are major in the world, I learned that there are many issues I didn't even know were relevant or were existing until I was talking to people and making connections. And I also learned that a lot of people may not want to speak out on these topics because they feel like, oh, no one's going to listen to me. But when they see someone else on it, they're going to see that, oh, someone is listening. There is someone there to speak for me when there's no one else to.
Thank you, Renise. Yeah. Anyone else? What have you learned about yourself, Gabby?
I learned that through this process, we were able to connect on one big thing that we thought was super important and that we can all connect on and share, and coming to the group every Friday just helped me, and looking back a year ago, I would never be able to do this in front of anybody, so I'm just really thankful.
Anybody else?
Never underestimate yourself, because we're here now and we made an impact on a whole lot of people because they answered back with 400 responses, and that's a lot.
Yes. Yes. How about anybody, a Miami student? What have you thought about this? What have you learned about yourself or the topic?
I'm just really inspired by these children. When I was that age, I wasn't thinking about these kinds of things, and it takes a lot of dedication to come on a Friday when you're tired and just still working with us to be working with these issues in the community. So I just want to give them all the props.
Yeah. It seems like we're getting more social problems every day, and it gives me hope that our generation has people like you guys that care about fixing these problems.
Any of the youth want to have a last word on what you've learned or anything you want to say before we turn it over to our community partners? Come on, we need a youth to have a last word. This is Youth Center, people. Come on, speak. How about we collectively say go youth? 1, 2, 3. Go youth! All right. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm super inspired all the time by this work. Next, what we'd like to do is we're going to transition, and so we've asked Julian and Morgan to provide their seats for our community members, so thank you. And we're going to invite up Jen Ahrens and Miss Pat Youngblood, and I'll do the introduction here shortly. Thanks for the transition. And you can now, John, go to the next slide.
This one? One before, if you don't mind, John.
There you go, John. All right. All right. So we've just shown you what we do with our first-year students in connecting to issues in the community that youth care about. And next, we're going to turn over to what we do in our junior seminar, our second-year students in our program, and the ways in which they work with our community agency partners. Represented here today is Jen Ahrens from Peaslee Neighborhood Center, who's our main contact there, and also Miss Pat Youngblood, who is one of our beloved community mentors. Through our program in that second-year course, our students are co-taught by Miami faculty, by community members, and by our community agency. So a really unique thing in that we love to, and we really find it important, and it's the ethos of this center, the Center for Community Engagement and Over the Rhine, is that we listen to the people in order to walk alongside. So I want to turn it over to Jen and to Ms. Pat to talk about the work. I do want to recognize that one of our listed colleagues today, Jenna Ithensteel, who works with Community Matters, our partner organization in Lower Price Hill, was unable to be with us today due to an illness in the family. So this team is going to represent both Peaslee and Community Matters.
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome. Make sure John sees your head nod for that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So we're excited to be here. As Tammy said, we work in the junior seminar portion of the program. And again, as Tammy said, it's an interesting setup in terms of who teaches the class, right? So it's co-taught, there's a Miami faculty member, and then there are a few of us who are staff in community-based organizations. Those are Peaslee Neighborhood Center, where I work, which is a 37-year community center here in Over the Rhine that does a variety of education and enrichment programming, all kind of oriented towards social justice here in Over the Rhine. The other community partner is Community Matters up in Lower Price Hill. That is a sort of sister organization in a neighborhood that shares a lot in common with Over the Rhine, but is also, pretty different in other ways. So, and then with that, we have residents and who are just incredible community activists, not all of whom really identify as activists, but they sure as heck are, longtime folks who have just fought for investment, for justice in their communities, in their neighborhoods, and have this tremendous amount of community wisdom. That is, what we get to tap into when we're in that class together. So Pat is one of those, mostly like badass moms and grandmas, not exclusively, but most of us in the room, right? Like who can, sometimes we're in there, like, okay, it's not Sunday, but it feels like Sunday because you are in church. But no, just such powerful moral wisdom and expertise that regularly goes unrecognized in our society or undervalued in our society. Pat, do you want to say anything about the mentors in general?
About the mentors, we're just members of the community that are very much interested in making sure that our young people understand what has gone before them in order to make things better for the future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's true, right? So how do we structure the class? Well, one thing we really kind of try to drill down on with students and all together, right, is really focusing on structural analysis, right? So we talk about, it's so easy to talk about urban problems, right? People talk about urban problems all the time, like trying to really focus on these are not urban problems, right? These are big systemic injustices that manifest themselves in particular ways in urban communities. So how can we shift the way that we talk about things? So we're not just coming in like, what urban problem are we going to study today, right? So we kind of start the class, we structure the class around kind of three major umbrella structural areas. One being capitalism, another being white supremacy, and another being patriarchy. And we sort of open up the class by everybody, it's this like fun ballot process of like, what issues within these umbrella kind of areas would you like to focus on this semester? So everybody sort of votes. This graph's like not great to look at, but basically like you look at a list of issues and you rank the ones that you're most interested in. We usually weight the mentors' votes a little bit to give them more of a lead in terms of dictating what the class kind of digs into together. But specifically, like one thing we focus on a lot is like the process and the practices and the skills, right? So it's not always about like, what's the thing in the moment that we want to do? What's the action right now, right? Sometimes it's like, how does this stuff work? How do we unpack it? What are the skills and capacities we need to understand and trace things to those root causes, right? How do we trace them through policy? How do we trace them through institutional practices? How do we have enough of a sense that any given issue or urban problem, we can take that and place it into context? Because you can't untangle a knot unless you really spend a lot of time looking at like how it's tangled, right? So a lot of that work we do kind of in first semester where we're diving into those issues, but we're really working to sharpen our structural analysis and be able to really unpack and illuminate, like, how do we get here, right? Like, transportation is this huge issue. It doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Like, how do we get there, right? Like, there's a pathway that was taken. There were many pathways. How do we unpack them so that we can address them? I want to recognize that, the other piece of that is, right, like when we talk about solutions, like how does change happen, right? So we're all itching for action, but how do we recognize the difference between good solutions and bad solutions, right? Like that can be really challenging. So our second semester, we really dig into that. John, you can go ahead and switch that. So one thing, this is one of the things we do in the class is we kind of introduce students to a series of tools that help with analysis. Like, hey, use this thing when you're talking about a given issue, right? So this is just kind of a spectrum of change and how change happens and whether or not change, different facets of it happen, how much it happens within the existing systems and how much it pushes to disrupt existing systems, right? And I think one thing that's really challenging about second year is that we try really hard to resist the urge to kind of follow a typical service learning model, right? Where the focus is on the students and the university students coming in and picking a project and like doing action, right? And really want to look at like, what does it mean to be plugging into change that might happen further up the spectrum? And what that ends up looking like is that students, where they are plugging into community work, it's typically long time community work. It's slow, it's grinding, and it doesn't look like a a semester-long project that that starts and ends with the students being present, and that it's difficult work, right? It's less warm and fuzzy sometimes. It means it can be frustrating when we're all really itching for action. Slowing down and taking time to do the analytical work can be a challenge, but I do just want to emphasize that I think, and I hope you'll speak to this next time, but the motivating factor, right, is not just we're going to fix the problem right now. It's that as we get sharper about these things, wherever we go, wherever those students go, they will take that expertise, they will take those skills, and they will apply them and utilize them in other communities where they go. I want to maybe just point out a couple of examples of some of the work that's happened, but I want to make sure you get some time to chime in here. Go ahead. You guys speak first, and then I'll look at it.
Well, I was going to speak about why I personally am involved in the program. So I have a pet peeve, and that is that history is not taught as it actually happened. That just grinds on me. So I'm very much interested in making sure that our young people understand what happened in the past, regardless of how it's taught in the classroom. And being a part of this program gives the mentors the opportunity to talk about what has happened in the past and how it has affected not only our lives, but the lives of the people who are coming after us. I can give you an example. What happened with the destruction of the West End in Cincinnati, Ohio, was very devastating for me. I'll just say that I grew up during that time, and it was very important to me to be able to say to my grandchildren, this is where I grew up, this is what happened, these are the places and things that we did. At this point in time, you can't find any of that because it was completely destroyed. So I love this program because this program actually brings the students into an area and gives them the opportunity not just to see what's here, but actually hear from people who live here why this particular community or their community, any community, is important to the people that are there. This program actually gives the students not only an opportunity to talk to the people who are actually living in the community, but gives them the opportunity to actually be a part of and listen to, because understanding really involves hearing what people are saying. And it's not always in what you see. You have to be able to hear, actually to feel what the people you're talking to, what the things they have experienced. And a lot of times it's not so much in what they say, it's what you see happening. Mm-hmm. And this program gives our students and young people the opportunity to actually be involved in that and not just hear from the people of the community, but to be a part and actually feel and experience what's happening in the community.
Powerful is that. Yeah, so we can have it very quickly. John, if you would, next slide. Just a couple of the long-standing community projects that students have plugged into during their time with us. And again, right, if we move away from just a service-oriented space, it's also not easy to do community organizing with students, right? When we have 9 times that we meet over the course of the year, right? There's not an expectation that students are going to be, fully doing community organizing, because together we're not really well positioned to do that in that space, right? So what are we well positioned to do? How can we engage meaningfully in seeing how these community initiatives play out, and like what role we might play together in them. So I'll get too sidetracked if I say too much about this equitable development rubric, but Peasley's been running a project for 4+ years to address inequitable development in our city, the rapid gentrification that over the Rhine has seen, that is happening in other neighborhoods as well, and really working towards essentially an inclusionary housing policy, right? Something in the city that would require affordable units or other important community benefits and equity measures being tied to market rate development that gets benefits from the city, gets subsidized by the city. There's a massive community project that's been going on for 4+ years around that. And students have been able throughout those 4 years in the course to look at what tools we're developing in that particular moment, right? Like we're in neighborhood community councils who are going toe to toe with the developer, right? Students aren't well positioned to enter that space, but they can look at what's happening there. They can listen to community members in terms of what they're experiencing, and then look at some of the tools that we're working on to assist those community members and contribute, right? So this is one example. We've been trying to design what good community input looks like in the development process, and what we might consider when we're giving developers standards that they should abide by when they're doing community input, right? So 1 year students really dug into that and kind of tried to come up with examples, standards or guidelines that they think or thought developers should be adhering to. The movement is a card game that's been, oh my goodness, for 4 years now, also in the works at Peasley. It's a card game that was designed by our young people in our Agents of Change program. It teaches about social movements. Essentially, it's a card game that teaches about social movements, but it leverages, it utilizes different kinds of change makers over American history and present. So our students, making a game hard, Pat's grandchildren have been all involved in the program and leading the ship on this project, but designing a game is really complicated. You have to test it a million times. You have to get it time. It's really hard. So when students come in and test the game with us and give us feedback and make recommendations, they have an assignment that's recommending new activists to be highlighted in the game, right? Those don't seem like game-changing projects that we're doing in the course of a semester, but they matter. They matter for the quality of the work that we're doing. They matter for kids getting to see their projects coming to fruition, and they matter for community people who are in those spaces. And then the last one, this was a Community Matters. Community Matters is one of the best organizations citywide to push back on the model of partnership that's really problematic. When you have small community-based organizations that know their people really well, and you have these big, high-powered, high-funded institutions that want to affect change, there's a lot that's problematic in how those big institutions often enter those spaces and seek to partner with those community groups. Community Matters, the folks over there just doing an incredible job trying to subvert some of the narratives. They use a tool like this that they pulled from an academic resource and that our students have used, and they've worked with our students, our students have done work to help them change some of the language to make it more accessible, to make it less stuffy and academic, and to make it something that feels like it's easy to use for people, whoever enters, right? So that can be how the community is presenting that to funders, or how community residents might enter and understand, like, oh yeah, that is why this is a problem. Even if they know it, it helps to have a frame, it helps to have a language. So that's some of just some examples of the community-driven projects that students have worked on. That's
awesome. Thank you. So I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but I just want to say that, again, this is an amazing group of human beings, and you don't see all the students behind this work as well, who engage in other youth at our other partner schools who are doing cool projects as well around working towards change in their communities about issues they care about. And then also working with our community partners. Miss Pat, I'm still struck by, I feel like I'm, like Jen said, I was in church there for a minute. About the way in which we engage in dialogue about things that often aren't talked about in other spaces. And again, in all of this, like, it's super important for us to honor the lived experience, the wisdom, the knowledge of these awesome youth here, of the community members, of the community members who are in our live audience here right now. I just want to say that is so important, You know, while some folks don't have PhDs behind their names, like they have a ton of stuff that we need to hear. We need to listen, Miss Pat, as you said, to understand more deeply. Last night we were here for an event that in which we watched a trailer for a documentary of our late colleague Tom Dutton, who started this work, started the center 20 years ago, but had been engaging in relationship building even 20 years before that. And what he said in the documentary trailer last night that struck me again is seek out those most oppressed so that we can learn how to live. Seek out others so that we can learn how to live. I've recently listened to someone speak called Father Greg Boyle, who talks about, he heads Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles. It is a nonprofit gang violence intervention program. And Greg Boyle says, if we go to the margins to be made different, then it's about us and our ego. But if we go to the margins to be made different, to listen to one another, to honor lived voices and experiences that may be different than our own, then we learn how to live differently in community with one another. And if I don't see a time more than ever that we need to do that, to create some hope, I think it's now. And so all of you in this room give us great hope for the work and for the way your communities are going to be and the way you're going to rock and be great leaders in this city and really change things for the better. Yeah, awesome. So we've got some questions here. All right. All right. So there are questions coming in, and Molly, you want to throw them out to us?
Yes. So one's more of a comment, and probably a really good one for those of you who don't know. But a friend of the project here, in fact, wants to make sure that everyone here knows about West End Stories project that is being put together by the Cincinnati Library. Key Parks, she's the West End branch manager, is recording oral histories for firsthand accounts of residents and community members, and he claims it's essential listening for every Cincinnatian, so something to think about should you want to spread your voice even farther. And then the last question is, can you talk a little bit more about the Urban Cohort and sort of how it works?
Sure.
On a larger scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, the Urban Cohort, which formerly started as the Urban Teaching Cohort, is a place-based and community-based approach to preparing professionals, now interdisciplinary, from multi-professions or multi-disciplines to work alongside folks in communities for justice. That's the 100,000-foot elevator speech. Basically what we do at Miami, students can come from any major. We've just recruited for our new cohort for next year. We had 57 applications and have just accepted our largest cohort ever. Not all 57 to our partners who are out there right now panicking. But they come from all majors. Somebody who wants to learn what it means to be a community-grounded teacher. What does it mean to be a community-grounded social worker? What does it mean to be a community-grounded architect or engineer or speech pathologist? We have students come from all majors. What does it mean to be? I have a student who's graduating right now who is in the Farmer School of Business and is going to go into public sector consulting. And what does it mean to change the way that consulting is done? So community voices are included more in that process. We just had that conversation the other day. So we recruit in their freshman year, and hopefully they're with us in their sophomore, junior, and senior year. And oftentimes our students in their senior year choose to do and participate in the center's fall residency program, where they live in community with other students from across all kinds of majors, some in the Urban Cohort, some coming to the community for the first time and living in community and taking a slate of classes here. And then also doing reflections, written reflections with our colleague, Bonnie Newmeyer, who's here with us today, to guide them in the processing of what they're experiencing as their bodies are here in the space, in community with folks, listening in conversations. A lot of what happens in that education doesn't happen within the space of, quote, a formal classroom, but it's about relationship building. So it's that 3-year arc that I always say to students, you still take all your classes in your major. Think of us as a parallel set of experiences that intentionally and more deeply situates you in the community, listening to other voices, and becoming more deeply embedded in the community. So that as our other community partner who can't be with us today, Miss Dorothy Darden, says, the fire is lit, and wherever you go, like the embers will be placed in another community where you go, and you can light those fires there. Hope that helps to the person who asked that question out there. All right. Well, I think a round of applause for this awesome group. Wonderful. I'm certain this is going to be the highlight of my day. I don't know about yours. But want to thank you, all of you who came to be in the room with us today, and those of you out there who joined us live. Might get another career in TV production here. We might do this. You know, we might think differently about how we get the word out there. But thank you for being with us, and have a great day.